Hi, Jessica.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, I'm here with Ma in the room. We are here. Afternoon for us. A nice, gentle Friday afternoon. Is it early for you there, Jessica? I think we scheduled this 1 hour earlier than normal.
Yeah, well, it's 6 a.m., but I'm kind of used to waking up at this time. Most of my day starts at 7.
Okay.
Apologies for that, and thank you for taking the time to join.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
We'll get started in a moment. Obviously, I should say it's all being recorded. I don't think we're getting Rai today. I don't know about Arun. So yeah, we'll get started in a moment. But yeah, it means fitting it in today at a slightly different time just means we can move it along a little bit without having to wait another couple of weeks.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think this time, I mean, only for this meeting, there was this time that needed to be moved, right?
Yeah, just this
Okay,
week. Yeah.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so what I'll do, I think with the three of us, and it's now coming up to 5 past, I'm just going to share screen. I can't remember, I don't think you joined the first call we had, Jessica?
I do remember joining one of them. The other ones I couldn't because of a conflict, but I do remember having joined one, but I'm being honest, I cannot recall which one I joined.
Yeah, apologies. Okay, yeah, you may have done. So maybe what I'll do is I'll do a quick recap of the way we're running this kind of sub task force, and just I do have some thoughts for things we could discuss today. So this is a wiki page in the LFDT governance repo, and it is intended to be I guess a recap of what the task force is for, and just a quick summary of what we discussed in the different meetings. So we had the first meeting, we talked a bit about what consistency of projects might look like, And then we had the TAC call where we played that back. And now we're on to the second task force meeting, which is today. So I guess the first thing just to mention briefly is that because the TAC recommended that this document be really more of a guideline document than a governance document, which is something that we had, I think, all thought it really was when we first had the initial meeting, because we already have more formal guidance in the existing governance documents. I've moved the resulting document under the guidelines section. And if I switch to, I think I have this on the branch, hopefully. So this is the document that I have moved. And as you can see, it's now under TAC guidelines rather than TAC project governance.
Right.
And actually, I should probably just update the metadata at the top as well. And the intention is that this document here is what will be the output of the task force when it concludes. So I started sketching out some areas of consistency we might talk about, and these little notes at MRW, my initials, are just what I've added in since the last meeting as things that we might want to talk about. And that's the kind of the way we've set this up. So this is now moved into the right place in the repo. The main topic I thought I would propose for today was really a relatively high level topic, I think, about how we think project consistency does differ from other existing documents that the LFDD provides around how projects might want to run. So if that feels like that's a useful thing to discuss on the call, I mentioned here at the top of the document that this best practices document, which is also, I think, under guidelines, this already exists. Do I want to show like, I don't mean raw. I wanted to make this a bit bigger, but I shall leave it for now. So the project best practices document already covers quite a lot of detail about good practice that a good project would follow. And as I read down this between the previous call and this one, I think I found myself pondering what this document is missing. I guess I thought maybe I'd take a different tack on the task force. Maybe I'd look at what this document might be missing if a project was coming to it and saying, we want to be consistent with how LFDT projects work and run and operate. I've read these guidelines, and what I think I'm missing is some guidance on being consistent with those other projects. Now, in a way, I think it's somewhat implicit that projects that follow the best practices, the existing ones, are going to have a good degree of consistency between them. That was where I found myself thinking, and this is the last one. I'll stop for a minute and let people comment in a moment. I found myself wondering whether or not this document that we started around consistency ought to be something that is perhaps wrapped into the existing document, the guidelines document, instead of being standalone, instead of being a separate document for project maintainers to consume. So I'll pause there. These other MRW comments are just things that I was thinking might fall in the category of consistency for some of these areas, but I think I'll pause there and just see what people's thoughts are, Enrique and Jessica, on how I found myself looking at this task force versus the existing guidelines.
Can you scroll up a little bit up?
Oh.
There. So regarding your question on whether this could be a separate document or wrapped into the existing one, I think part of what you're explaining, the areas of consistency relate to the existing one, right? I think wrapping it around that one will probably make sense.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something we should consider. One thing that I guess I have some caution about, and I mentioned this in the first call, is not wanting to overload projects with feeling like there are all these guidelines and rules for consistency that they need to consume and understand and follow, so that their role as project leads isn't unnecessarily heavyweight. So that was partly where I was coming from in terms of maybe adding into existing guidelines versus having a totally new additional document around consistency. But I think it might come back to then how perhaps if we were to continue working within this consistency document, if we find that the things that we're talking about here in terms of consistency naturally fall into just general guidelines, then perhaps it's later on in the task force that we roll it up into those guidelines, and once we have a bit more to kind of compare and contrast.
I see. Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think a few thoughts from me. I think I agree there's some overlap between the project best practices and like this sort of mission of consistency. I think I understand your worry of projects having to adopt a lot of things. The way I think would be a good goal for this task force in terms of consistency is the goal I want to solve, I think, as part of this is people coming into the LFTT, looking at the ecosystem of projects available and being able to interact and understand them and consume them in a consistent way. And that might mean, just as a thought here, actually being a bit more strict on how projects need to adopt these best practices. Today, that project best practice is kind of like a guideline. Do the things, there's like a few things that you need to do to be able to be onboarded, all right, the CO checks, etc. There's a few minimum requirements to contribute a project into the FTT, but all the rest are like best practices. You might want to use Semver, you might want to release this way, but if we have a bit more strict consistency of this is how you publish new versions, so we can actually put them in newsletters and we can actually distribute that knowledge better. This is how you should do X way of installing, or like, I don't know, some more consistent stuff might be easier for people to come in to the ecosystem. That's how I see it. And I can see that if you go back to the best practices document, there is a lot of overlap, right? In terms of documentation, and all of these are C examples. So that's, yeah, I'm quite torn on how much I think enforcing a little bit of consistency in areas we think is like the first thing people would see, I think is important. And then there's a part where it's more best practices, right? There are things that are individual things, like how do you do project management inside? That might be, oh, we recommend you this, or other more things might be up to each project. Like, for example, we saw the case with Hyro, right? With the graduate proposal yesterday, they have loads and loads of repos, right? So they might have a different way of managing their project. They have best practices on how to manage maintainers. I saw they created their own global maintainers, ND, etc. Had a look at it. Whereas myself in Firefly, we also have a lot of repos, but we have a maintainer per project or something like that. So yeah. I guess those are my 2 cents in terms of how I see it. And I think that this will help us outline what the goal of this task force is, like what is the end objective.
Yeah, I think those are all very good points. Yeah, I found myself, as I was thinking through possible areas for consistency, I found myself thinking about things like, well, bug tracking. That's a thing that people who want to contribute to project are going to want to be able to understand and filter easily in a way that's consistent with other projects. And things like using good first issue labels was something that came to mind. And indeed, that kind of stuff is already covered by guidelines.
I think there is an interesting point here. If the goal, part of the goal is make projects be consistent so that, and that so that might be the LFTT as a whole can keep a dashboard of X data for projects, right? That's another way of seeing consistency done in all these orgs. So you could have a dashboard of how many bugs or how many good first issues each project has. So you can map the ecosystem as a whole of the project. So the only way we map ecosystems and issues is we have a page for all the projects. We have the wiki, where each project describes things, and then each project has its own GitHub repos where it tracks that. But there isn't like a global click here to see the roadmap in a very consistent way for all the projects. Like, what are the quarterly goals? What are the yearly goals? That's the sort of consistency I'm after. Instead of being like very specific, like this is the format of your issues. Just to give an example.
Yeah, it's a good point. And actually, you mentioned a couple of things. I can't remember. We talked about maybe areas of consistency. Release planning and release communication was one. Feature story tracking. Yeah, and we did talk a bit about roadmap, and that's maybe an area that I think there probably is scope for projects to be more consistent. I think when the projects I'm involved in, so Firefly, Paladin, Besu, people often are asking, tell me about the roadmap. Like, I'm a user, I want to know what's the roadmap looking like? What can I expect to be coming? We see roadmap as TAC members in the annual quarterly reports.
Yeah.
But that's very much an LFDT view of things. I know that Besu maintains a wiki that has a view of the current roadmap. I don't think all projects have a clearly written down roadmap in one place that's in a consistent way. So I think I agree. I think that those kind of points are quite valuable. I think the one you mentioned about understanding who the consistency is for and what's the so that.
So it's the Friday 22nd today, by the way.
Sorry, thank you very much. That may have been the previous one that got cancelled.
That's fine. And I think in the what's the so what, it might be that this consistency is either or both for the value of the LFET to manage the projects, right? For the TAC, for the Linux Foundation to actually manage projects, or the consistencies for consumers of these projects and the ecosystem. Because you might have tooling that says, okay, by being consistent, I can track better, I can report Q4 reports better, like I can use, in each report, I can just link the roadmap and just tick what I've done and what I haven't done. It's easier for us to review. And for project maintainers, it's like, for us consumers, it's more like, okay, I can go in and see how I can contribute, what are the things I can see. And just remembering like that, the two things that my 2 cents are, for who's consistency is for, and how do we enforce this consistency? Because so far, as part of the TAC, we've been quite gentle with best practices, and I understand that we don't want to put too much the barrier too high to contribute new projects into the FET. But if we want to maintain some level of consistency, we might want to enforce based on criteria, maybe like incubation, etc. A minimum level of like consistency. That's where I. But yeah, I've spoken a lot, so feel free to jump in.
I think that makes sense to me, to be quite honest.
Cool.
And so what I started doing is just trying to jot down in the meeting notes some of these topics that we covered. I also, as I was typing that, I found myself thinking, well, actually, the so that or the who's this for is going to mean that potentially the consistency requirements are different. So I don't think a project user is going to have a strong view about bug tracking particularly, but they might have a strong view on being able to see what the roadmap is. I think project maintainers are probably immersed in the roadmap. They're probably immersed in community calls where it's discussed. They're probably immersed in the story and feature work to implement new features. But they might have a strong view about how release planning is communicated and processed. These are just some examples I get. I'm not sure how much of things like release planning falls under what consistency should be driving at. I think in some respects, we talked a little bit about this at various times. I think project maintainers, the people maintaining a project, I think the areas that they have an interest in are probably the areas that I would argue should be given more freedom to work in ways that they find is productive.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's at all useful to tell people working on a project, you should be doing your releases like this on this cadence. You should be announcing them at these intervals and so on. That's far too prescriptive a way of projects to be run. And I think in my mind, that's helping cement a little bit who's going to benefit from consistency. I think it is users and consumers of a project. And I think possibly the LFDT as well, like you say, Enrique. I think maybe maintainers themselves, I think that's possibly the area where consistency across projects is the least important in my view. If you think about the different languages that projects are written in and the different idioms that developers in different environments use, I think consistency for maintainers is probably one of the least important. Perhaps with one caveat, and again, I'll stop talking in a moment, with one caveat, which is I know we've heard a lot on the LFDT recently about lack of maintainers for certain projects. I think wherever consistency can be improved across projects, there's slightly more opportunity for maintainers to contribute to multiple projects. I don't think that's a panacea for fixing, magically finding maintainers for projects, but yeah, I don't think we should totally forget that side of things, which I know several projects are experiencing at the moment.
I guess on the release stuff that you mentioned, I guess I wasn't trying to be like prescriptive of like this is the cadence or this is the version number you need to use or how you increment it. I'm saying more around how you make that available. How do you communicate that?
Yeah.
Do you communicate it through a wiki? Do you communicate it through a post? Is it just a Go release or GitHub release?
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's hard, and I think that helps when you onboard new projects as well. Because I was reviewing the compact language that this guy contributed, and I have access to the source code. They weren't releasing on GitHub, and I was expecting them to have a release in GitHub, and I wasn't sure what guideline I did to give them on when you contribute this into the LFDT. Is there a place you should document your latest version? Some people use the README of their project. Some people use a doc site with the latest tag on it, or a version tag on their doc site. Other people use the GitHub one. Other people use Docker images. So I don't know if there is like one place where people should be communicating their latest version. But then it's up to them what the version is. If they want to go from 1.0 to 2.0, that's up to them.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened to Hyro as well, where they, when we were reviewing yesterday, not necessarily all the releases are in GitHub artifacts. They can be in Crates.io, they can be in Pipey, etc. So, but the way these releases are communicated, that definitely has to have. It would be useful if we had a guideline for project consistency there.
Yeah, because the way I communicate in Firefly, I put out here on the Discord channel and go 1.4, it's just been released. And here's the URL to the doc site. So I don't know if that should be somewhere else. Yeah, that's just an open question. Okay, cool. You just put both of those, both project Discord channel. I just read it, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think these are some of the areas I was thinking about. And I think release communication is one. I think the other areas I gave some thought to around bug tracking. I think there was already guidance about there's an acronym for the consistent way to name bugs and issues and so on in GitHub, but I think those are already covered in some of the other guidelines. Release communication definitely is one where I think it's not overly prescriptive to be quite opinionated as the LFDT about the way projects communicate releases and post them in different places. I think roadmap is something, again, I do feel is an area that LFDT could be quite prescriptive, because I think having a consistent place for people to look is useful, even if that place is a hyperlink. You know, if the consistent way of communicating a roadmap is to have a roadmap MD in the root of your repo, which points at a wiki or points at an Atlassian doc site or somewhere else entirely, I think that's fine. But perhaps having a consistent starting point to find the roadmap.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I think that's where you can be stricter on the small starting points, and then the details underneath it can be more like guidelines of where we think is a good place for you to put them. I think that's
exactly.
I'm getting the live editor stuff here, so I'm going to skip out of that a second. I'll make some notes outside of this. Yeah, I will add some notes to that. Yeah, I don't know. Can I open this and edit live? Seem to be taking me to the okay. Okay. Yeah. As well. Okay. Cool. And yeah, perhaps another area. And again, I think I'd need to go back and read what else the FDT prescribes around security and CV reporting. But generally, I think perhaps security can break down to several areas, but CVE tracking, I think particularly is a really valuable area of consistency for project consumers. So being able to easily identify this CV is not in this release or higher. Being able to link to the PR where it was addressed that talks about the version of the given module or prereq that fixed the CVE. I think that CVE reporting is one area that I think I'm going to go and have a look at what LFDT currently talks about in that area and go and look at some of the other projects and how they handle those. I think that's an area that people expect to be able to find information easily. Other security around how the repos are managed and code owners, etc. I think that's something that you mentioned, Enrique, and I think potentially is quite going to end up somewhat project specific, depending on how the repos are subdivided and so on. And I know we already have, each project has scores for their repo health, including security checks that they include in their annual reports. So I think security at a high level is covered, but I think maybe security around things like CVs is an area that perhaps we could firm up a little bit in terms of how CVs are reported. Where are they reported? Are they raised as an issue? Where are they reported when, where to whom should they be disclosed if they are potentially high severity. And I know that Besu, for example, has a closed communication channel for maintainers to discuss privately outside of the public domain the timeline for fixing a particularly severe vulnerability. So that the issue can be remedied within a short period of time, but so that exact timelines and perhaps public awareness of that vulnerability isn't made unnecessarily available before a fix has been released. So I think perhaps CV reporting, CV tracking, and disclosure at least might be useful to document what the process is for that. Again, I'd have to go through the LFDT docs and see if there's any guidance on CV disclosures. So I think I might split out, actually. I might split out security and
I think there is a security
project vulnerabilities.
There is a security document in one of the templated repos where you can paste your security stance inside your project. I forgot what it was, where it was, but I can send it to you. But there's like a
security template, right?
Sorry?
It says the security file template.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is one. I sorry that I don't have it handy either, but that's what I used for setting up Hyros one. It does talk about how to report issues, how to handle issues, etc. But also, I guess security goes also very much hand in hand with what OpenSSF and even in Cairo, they ask us to use a lot of LFX as well. So that's part of the tooling that I don't know if we want to include here.
Yeah, that's the tooling part. Each project has its own tooling, and some of the tooling is closed source to specific companies that are backing those projects as well. There is a CV, I sent you the link on Zoom. There is a part there on CV reporting on using GitHub.
Thank you. Cool. I'll have a look at that and compare that to what we've jotted down in the document. Okay, I think that's really useful. So I think it'd be useful to, over the next few calls, to perhaps identify who the consistency ideally is for, and I think I might fall into a couple of categories. I think it can be useful as much as anything to write down what are the areas of consistency that we specifically aren't going to try and address. I think playing that back to the TAC would be valuable, so they can see that we've talked through a number of these areas, and actually we think these ones specifically we don't feel fall under consistency. So I might try and start a section where we've talked through some things already. I did kind of start a section for this at the beginning of the task force because I think it's important and it shows, I think, the TAC what we've talked about and covered and ruled out. And again, the mechanics of doing a release was one of the first things I thought about. I think that's different to where the release is communicated, but the buttons you press, the GitHub Actions and so on.
Yeah.
So I will maybe start moving some things into here that we've talked about in this call and the previous call. That allows other people joining subsequent calls to see, some of the areas we've talked about. Okay. So I think I would do a little bit of tidy up after this call just to get the document slightly updated based on what we've discussed. We have, I think we have 10 minutes left of the scheduled slot. Is there anything else around this that we think it'd be useful to discuss today, or is it worth taking stock and doing some updates to the document before the next meeting and then cycling back around then?
I think
yeah, I think it could use some pressure, but also I think we need to include potentially more people to participate as well.
Yeah, and we're slowly coming out of holiday vacation season for both UK and US a bit, and elsewhere probably. So I think it's understandable we don't have a huge number joining at the moment. I couldn't attend the previous one because I was on a family vacation, and so we may find that the next one, which will fall in September, is a little better attended. I'll drop an update into the Discord channel for the task force just to say we've had the meeting and a quick summary of what we've discussed. And I will maybe mention in there a couple of the folks who have expressed an interest in joining, so they're up to date on it. And we'll see if we maybe get a few more of us just to talk through some of these on the next call. And I know Rai had some really good views and opinions on the output of this task force. So I think it'd be really valuable if he's able to join the next one, that we play back where we got to. I think the more people we have, the more representation we have on opinions from different projects and different areas of the LFDT.
Exactly. And yeah, I mean, I can speak for Hyro since it is the only project I have been working on, but definitely Rai has experience of most of all the projects in LFDT, so his input is really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
yeah.
is this task force open to non-TAC members? I don't know how it works.
I don't see why not. I mean, so Rai is not a member of the TAC.
That's why, yeah. So
So
I think we should publicize it in other places. So there's like maintainers of projects that might want to have their input on this a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
Like core maintainers.
yeah,
it's a good point. Yeah, I think we could consider dropping it into maintainer channels for some of the projects.
Yes.
But without, like you say, it's difficult to judge when is a good time to do that. So yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I like the idea.
Okay. I'm just going to update these changes so that.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for that, Matt, for running that.
Not at all. No, I think that's possibly a good place to end today. And we'll catch up on the next call.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for joining. I hope you go and get a coffee now.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
All right.
Bye for now.
Bye.